Hello, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about Chicago's scariest spirit in time for spooky season. But as a transplant, I needed to bring some help. So hi, my name is Melody. I talk about books and book adjacent things. But today I am here with one of my very best friends, Dana, who has dubbed herself Chicago's resident
Slimeball. You needed one of them.
I did indeed.
For this.
For this, for sure. And just in my general life, I think.
Yeah.
You may know her best from TikTok.
You can find me on TikTok at Dana Doing Her Best. It's the Bangtan News. You can also find me on the Ultimate Bias podcast. I told the news there too.
The crossover you did not know to expect.
Worlds colliding.
But today we are here to talk about the infamous Chicago spirit, Malort.
Malort.
So, if you are associated with Chicago in any way, you surely have a Malort story. And I have lived in fear of this alcohol since I moved, which, oddly enough, when reading this book that we read in preparation for today, Malort, The Redemption of a Revered and Reviled Spirit by Josh Noel, which is already back-ordered. And our pre-order came in late because this book was in such high demand, just as Malort inexplicably is, though more explicably because we've read the book. So if we take it back, because we're actually about to go on a vacation together.
Yeah.
And on the day that you proposed me joining this vacation,
Yep.
we ended up in a speakeasy in Chinatown.
We sure did.
And we were many sheets to the wind. I think 3 sheets would be pretty
It wasn't enough
conservative.
sheets. That's not enough sheets.
And I made the mistake of telling you I had never had Malort.
And you've been here for a decade.
A decade. Which, coincides.
Granted, I will say I take responsibility for that because I've known you for several years and I, being a local, have failed you in that.
I kept it pretty close to the chest purposefully.
I think that might be part of it, but I should have done my due diligence.
So this will be our first sober Malort together because, as you can see, we have prepared Malort and old styles. So we are going to talk about this book, Malort, our experiences with this alcohol, while enjoying some Chicago handshakes.
Yeah. The handshake, which we learned, is in fact less than a decade old. It feels like just with, I guess, the items involved, it's been around for long enough, but I mean, I've been doing these for years. So
you will go and ask and order Malort unironically.
I will.
So that's a flex in and of itself.
Well, sometimes you get the party going. Start the day off with a handshake. The bartender is always like, very good. All right.
Let's,
cheers.
Cheers to Chicago.
Chicago.
That wasn't as bad. I say as my voice cracks a little bit.
We were at the bar and several sheets, and after you did the shot, you said, that wasn't that bad. And I said, it's time to go.
And you know what? You weren't wrong.
No, it was the right call.
It was definitely time to go.
It was the right call.
That, I think, and I said it then too, the aftertaste is getting me.
Yeah.
I think in my head, I was expecting like Everclear or something that you should never consume by itself or at all.
No.
I'd like to think it's the Swedish in me that makes.
Yeah, I mean, I was like
shocked. I didn't realize the Swedish history.
It's very Swedish, yeah. I posted on my social media that I was going to be filming this video, and one of my subscribers said, I was shocked to see a Swedish word come across my screen because they're in Sweden.
Mm-hmm. And we learned a lot about the Swedish history.
We did.
In the book. But I'm interested because you are a Chicago native.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in your perspective on how you grew up around Malort, especially because you've always talked about Malort as this kind of omnipresent thing. So I was very interested in the perspective that we read in the book, where it seemed to almost like go away and come back.
Yeah. That's not true. I felt like that was kind of a falsity in the book, and I think it is from the point of view of one person having collected content and stories from the people in the book, you know. But I think it was a little bit of a white collar perspective on a blue collar drink, if that makes sense.
And he did mention in the book, because it was well researched. I really enjoyed.
There was a lot of good information in this book for just even Chicago history and some and a group of people in the city, an ethnic group that's not really talked about. Yeah. You know, you're in Chicago and you hear about the Italians and you hear about the Irish and you hear about the Black Americans and you hear about, you know, our Puerto Rican heritage, all of those. But there are smaller pockets of smaller groups that did build specific areas in the city. And so the Swedes are generally ignored. So,
except for the Swedish Heritage Museum in Andersonville.
If you're in Andersonville, you'll see it and you go, oh, really? Why is this here? And this is why.
I've never read about Andersonville so much in my life.
I know. I live in Andersonville, and I still.
And it mentioned Simons as like, was it Simon? It's Simons, right? That's like this was the stronghold of Malort.
And we've been there.
Yeah, we've also gotten 3 sheets to the wind there.
Yeah. I love that dive bar. Are you kidding me? Last time I was in there were dogs. There were just dogs in the bar.
If you're watching, you're learning so much about me in these moments. I have, in fact, been drunk. But yes, so I'm interested in your perspective on how it portrayed, because it portrays the history of Malort like in the 60s and 70s, and then kind of like goes into the dark period.
The dark period. I think it portrays the history of Malort through the veins of very specific people. So the owners, and then down to the owner, and then down to the hipsters that brought it all back. So you're going to get it's not that it's a narrow view. Historically, it's really cool, but broadly, not a lot is there broadly.
Yeah.
And so even in its grassroots era, like in the beginning, in the 20s and 30s, it was a blue collar drink, and it remained a blue collar drink until very recently. And so growing up for me, and it's also a very north side perspective. Everything's kind of around first Andersonville and then literally the Gold Coast and then up into the northern suburbs and back down into the Gold Coast, and so it doesn't go past the river. But the south side is the blue collar area of the city, and growing up, we knew about Malort. Malort existed. It was a drink that our granddads drank. So like Malort was a thing. It got hard to find, but it's not that it wasn't in the lexicon. Like we knew that it existed. We knew that it was a thing. And so there was kind of this, it makes it feel like it completely disappeared and then it came back. It's always kind of been in our minds that it was this thing, and Chicago has this drink that's like, for some people, real rough. But it's always been kind of like a thing. And so I was just like thinking, I was like, I've always known Malort, you know, in college specifically. I was in college in 2003 through 2008. We knew what Malort was. Like, it would be at a house party, you know, so they did sell cases, and I think that's the thing. Like, they talk about the case count a lot. The cases did sell. Small amounts of them, but the cases did sell. And so if you found specific blue-collar areas, like, you could find it.
I liked the case count as, like, a kind of trajectory and, like, being able to see.
And a case has 12 bottles. So if you think about, like, how many bottles are in a case, like, a case has 12 bottles, and so that, and then you can multiply that by how many they would sell in, like, a year.
Because, like, at one point in the 2000s, it was seeming like, I think there was one point that it was under 2,000 cases a year. Mm-hmm. So you may very well have been keeping Malort in business in college.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. For sure. No, probably so.
Just all of
probably
the Columbia.
So. And also all of the Columbia kids, yeah. And honestly, a lot of the bars that were mentioned are bars that are still here that we would go to as youth. And so when they talked about the Green Mill, we would go to the Green Mill. You know what I mean? And so that might be the thing. Like, there were bars that still stocked it continually.
And it was interesting to hear about Malort in relation to, like, the Chicago institutions.
Yeah.
And think about, like, Chicago institutions in relation to bar culture and how that coincides with, like, everyday people. Mm-hmm. Because I did really appreciate that, like, in the narrative, one, I appreciated because I was not worried, but it's such a niche subject out of a small press, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be more like an academic kind of historical gathering of this information.
Which I think it is, but it's written in a way where it feels like you said it best, you're like, I feel like I'm reading stories that I'm hearing about at the bar. You know, and so I think that was what's really good about the book, the way he authored it. Josh. I keep wanting to call him Joel. I know that's not right.
It's because his last name's Noel.
That's it! But he wrote it as if, you know, you're like, with some guys just like, oh, you want to hear about this?
And it almost... Sorry.
And it does tie in to how they kind of got going again, like for it to be more of a widespread thing of like, the guy going and be like, so here's how this shit started, And so it's written as if I think it's a really good tie-in.
Yeah.
It's written how you would hear it at the bar.
And it kind of mimics the marketing of, which we'll get into, but the marketing of Malort that we know and kind of love, as evidenced by our I'm Malorted t-shirts, that I think appeals to, like, especially our generation and how we interact with Malort. Like, I mentioned this book at book club last night, and Emily was like, oh yeah, Josh already has that on his radar. Like, so people who you wouldn't think like, know about the book, which is why it's backordered for sure.
Yeah. We're leaving on Wednesday. By the time this comes out, we'll already be back. But we're leaving out the country on Wednesday, and we planned to have this filmed weeks ago. So, and edited and ready to go before we even left. Not the
wouldn't have to worry about anything. And now we are drinking Malort the weekend before we have an international flight.
I mean, it's gonna...
You might drink Malort twice, because they're going to be at Riot Fest tomorrow. I got an email about it, because I bought this t-shirt.
They are in fact the... which actually is fun, because in the book, it's even in there how Riot Fest contacted them and said, hey, you should sponsor Riot Fest. And at the time, they couldn't financially do it, but I was just like, oh, how times have changed. That was 6 years ago. Now look at them, the major sponsor of Riot Fest.
That was one of my only major critiques about how, like, the book was structured, because it was linear. Yeah. And, like, broken...
Linear, but not.
Yeah, and that's where sometimes, like, we'd be in these chunks where it would be major years, but sometimes I would get lost in them, because we would kind of circle back to things, because things are interwoven, which makes sense. But then I would want that touchstone of, like, wait, what year did this happen? Especially when we're in, like, the present, where I have more of a footing and can, like, kind of associate things. Like, in the epilogue, when they were talking, I think they do give years for this, so this is a bad example, but, like, the infused Malort, and, like, we're still in the middle of some of that.
We are still in some of the... we are still in some of the infused.
So, that was an interesting kind of... I wish that, like, there was more to kind of ground me in specific times in some points of the narrative.
Sure.
But I do like that it was all linear, but also thematically linked. I think the structure of it made sense.
Yes. I think so, because sometimes when there's new players coming into the game of Malort, there would have to be that go back. Because when they're being because it all kind of circles around the owner and her story, and then at certain times new people would come into her story, but that doesn't mean their story with Malort started there. Sometimes it started back, so it would have to kind of backtrack, and then eventually it would get into the timeline again, and then go, and then a new person would come in, and it would go back in the timeline, and then catch up into where we're at, and then go, and so that's kind of how it was built, because you needed to get kind of the backlog on why does this bro have such a love for this infamous amber liqueur.
And it's funny because, like, everything is kind of started kind of the way we started, how you were first interacted with Malort, your reaction to Malort as a drink. There's so many descriptions of Malort in this. I feel like all of my tabs of this book are just descriptions of Malort that I thought were funny. And also the fact that George, the original owner, grew up in the same neighborhood as Saul Bellow. Like, that's what I marked. Yeah. Like this line, there was always as much Malort as anyone needed. More, in fact. Much more.
Sure.
And that's now, fair. Like, there was a time where they were worried about running out of Malort.
Now you can't not go into a local bar and not find it. Like, you can just walk up to any bartender and go, can I get a handshake? And they will hand it to you.
Though, in the right circumstances, because it used to be like a joke shot.
Yeah.
For a while. And to a certain point it still is. Like, it's a hazing ritual for, like, new people, out-of-towners. Part of the reason I think I lived in fear of it, because I didn't want to embarrass myself.
Because we kind of, I mean, to be fair, that is a little bit on us, because we will say, oh, I'm gonna get you. Yeah. Have you done a shot of Malort yet? Yeah. And it's said in such an ominous way.
Yeah.
But that's part of the fun for us. Yeah. Is to freak you out first. And then you can kind of see, like, you kind of cut your chops. So your reaction to first being offered the shot. Yeah. And then once you take the shot, your character is then judged from that.
Right.
From there on out.
It's your your legacy as a Chicagoan.
True.
I didn't want to fail that test.
Yeah. The biggest fail is turning the shot down.
Yeah.
You can't turn.
Which is why I didn't lose at bar trivia at the time I went to bar trivia, because I did not want to have to take the Malort shot. I got very into it.
Yeah.
I was like, we cannot lose.
I remember seeing a TikTok one time, and it was a girl who's a transplant and said, these are the things that I've learned about Chicago. And one of the things she said is, a local is going to offer you a shot of Malort. Don't take it. And I said, you just failed the first test. Yeah. That was my comment, was you failed the first test. You take the shot. Yeah. Like, you take it. If you're at a bar and you're drinking, you take it. If you're not a drinker, why are you at a bar?
Chicago is a drinking city. Yeah. And I feel like Malort reflects that so well.
I mean, during the DNC,
yes,
the governor took everyone to local bars and had them do shots of Malort.
Actually, if you are not from Chicago and you know of Malort, well, granted, it's got a more national
presence now.
But you may have seen it most recently through the DNC coverage.
JB! The Prince, man! He took everybody to shot. He took fucking Jen Psaki. She was just like, we gotta stop real quick. Hang on, this is Malort.
And she threw it back.
Oh, women can drink Malort.
I want to talk about that. So, can we talk about the marketing of Malort, going back to, like, the original marketing? Sure. And just kind of like, okay, so it was originally...
But first we're Malort.
Yes, more Malort. So, it was originally owned by this guy, George, who has a storied kind of history, but he kept Malort through some trials and tribulations as, like, his one kind of hobby business, and was very passionate about it. But his marketing of Malort was very specific, and by today's terms, very kind of sexist.
Sexist, yeah. But not for the 60s.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Cheers.
But it was all... Hold, please. If you were a man enough to drink Malort.
Yeah.
And, like, what kind of man. Mm-hmm. A little bit of homophobia in some of the marketing as well. The things you... unfortunately,
yeah. Like, 60s, man up.
Yeah.
It was during the 60s, so if you think about it, like, the hippie movement starting and, like, the mods and all of that. And so it was kind of a, like, tough man's drink. Like, you get out of the steel mill and you fucking do shot of Malort. You know?
Which I feel like is the book's real connection to the South. Like, it mentions the steel mills and, like, the working class neighborhoods. But
yeah, so it would go down, like, down to the stockyards and stuff like that. And, like, you know, the unions and, yeah.
But, so we have that kind of framing, which has carried into today in interesting ways. But we were talking about this. There's one line, and I don't think I marked it, but it talked about how women don't have as visible a reaction to Malort as men often do.
Yeah.
Which I found really interesting, both in terms of that marketing and the framing, as well as the kind of, like, legend that's built up around Malort, and, like, the scare tactics, and, like, in good fun.
Yeah.
So to know that is just kind of ironic and vindicating in a lot of ways.
It's true. And it's true. And I think it was such a manly drink, but at the same time, the men are the ones who struggle drinking it.
It's like how I heard that girl on the train a couple weeks ago, like, just talking about how much she loves Malort, like, unironically.
Yeah, I unironically like it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, that's her drink. That's your drink, you know?
Yeah, I enjoy it. And a lot of people do. That's the thing. I think there is kind of this, there's this misnomer that everyone hates it, but we drink it for, like, just to, like, because, you know, just to, like, remind you you're alive kind of thing. But a lot of people unironically like it. Like, it does have a bitter, herby, kind of incensey kind of taste to it. So it's not smooth. Yeah. That's the thing. It's not smooth. But but if you are okay with it not being smooth, I think people confuse good liquor with it being smooth. That's not always the case.
Well, and they talked about that in the book too, is like this idea of like when they were kind of reframing after the buyout.
Yeah.
Whether they were going to re-market it or repackage it, and like one of the options was that it's a healthier liquor because it doesn't have all of the added like sugars that make things smoother and more palatable.
Yeah.
And ultimately they decided against that, which was the correct choice.
It was the correct choice.
Because if we think
we're not drinking it for health.
No. We're, like, I wanted to say we're not drinking it for fun, but we are. We are sitting here drinking this for fun.
Yeah.
Like, I bought these books and these t-shirts and this Malort just because I wanted to indulge
Yeah, it's
in
fun.
this. Like, we're just having fun.
This dumb shit's fun. That's the thing.
I'm not going to make money on this.
No.
We're just sitting here drinking. It's an excuse to sit here and drink Malort and talk about it.
Yeah. That's it.
So,
I want to start the culture of drinking Malort just to drink Malort. Just have fun.
yeah.
Who cares if people look at you sideways? Because a lot of people are
mean,
going to look at you sideways.
I do appreciate it because of the spirits. At least it's one that you can drink and you won't want to punch me later in the night.
True, it's not gin.
Which is funny because some of its marketing is tonight's the night you'll fight your dad.
I would fight my dad on Malort.
To be fair, you'd fight your dad without Malort.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a heavy shot.
Give some to you, like, top a little of that off in
We'll
there.
hold the bottle because this is going to be a disaster.
I mean, I can do it.
Maybe you should do it.
I'll do it. I just don't want to spill it.
I feel like it's inevitable at this point.
Here, clink at the bottom of my shot glass. Clinky. There we go. Clink. Cheers.
Oh, okay. But I feel like the marketing, because I don't want to spoil the whole book, and I don't think there's any way we can talk about the whole trajectory of Malort.
No.
But
There's no way.
there's the original kind of marketing and George's kind of vision, and then there was like the dark ages of Malort, though we've discussed that it wasn't the dark ages that the book necessarily portrays.
Yeah, I think we could probably argue that in the 60s, the 50s and 60s, there was still very much a factory worker, working class, blue collar. It still exists to this day, but it started to dwindle, particularly in Chicago in the 70s and the 80s, and there was an uptick in white collar activity.
Yes.
And so the cultures in this city particularly in that are very different.
Yeah.
So I could argue that, yeah, the need for that sort of thing and in that specific, like, you know, way of life got smaller in specific areas of the city.
Yes.
In on the south side, on the west side, it stayed very, it was still very prevalent, prominent, still is to this day. But I think during its new, like, boom within the last 15 years, we'll say, being blue collar is a part of the city that its people are just kind of, this is just how it is.
Yeah.
This is how it is. And of course the hipster revolution.
It was very interesting to read that, especially when you talk about it in like on the west side. And remember that I'm geographically challenged, despite the fact that I've lived here
a
long
there.
time.
It's that side, that way.
That way. But when it talked about the gentrification, specifically of Wicker, and like bringing that up, and
Wicker Park, I knew. Listen, when someone tried to rip off Malort, when they brought up Velvet Hour, even at the beginning, I was just like, why are they bringing up Velvet Hour? Because Velvet Hour is a hipster-ass, uppity-ass Wicker Park cocktail bar establishment. I've only been there once. I hated it. So I was like, why are they bringing up Velvet Hour in regards to Malort? Then you find out this motherfucker tried to copy it and tried to call it their own version of Malort, tried to class it up because they wanted to make it good. I'm like, Malort's not supposed to gut. What's wrong with you? And I knew it was some uppity ass. And that I was like, it's Velvet Hour, and it was.
You derailed all of my thoughts because you know how I love when you go on your little tirades.
These motherfuckers.
But when we think about that kind of convergence and how it was the working class people that ultimately introduced it to the people who revived Malort, who were the kind of gentrifiers,
the gentrifiers,
kind of hipster crowd in these areas, which is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot here nor there about gentrification. That's not what I'm saying.
It's a problem.
In terms of the narrative of Malort specifically. And then to see that narrative of the attempted gentrification of Malort.
Of Malort, yeah. To take this working class drink and try to yuppie it up for, you know, the people who only want to drink cocktails and shit. It's one thing to make a Malort cocktail. You can, and you can make good ones, you know. But for them to be like, well, we're going to change it, though.
Yeah.
To make it suit the palates of the people who want to go to a cocktail bar and not do a shot and drink an old style. You know what I mean? Like, like for that. And I was like, these fucking yups.
I do wish, because we talk about like the structure of the book, but it didn't provide really, there was a good voice to it. It had that comedic voice, but there wasn't necessarily any specific commentary, I don't think. Because there is an exploration, I think, that could be engaged in, related to, like, those ideas of gentrification and the gentrification of Malort and what all of
that would have made this a much heavier book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think this was, because then now we're getting into social issues.
Yes.
And so that would, I think, have shifted the book in a way.
Yeah.
This was meant to be a lighthearted...
I'm not saying it's a bad...
take.
I don't want to imply that
No, but I think it would be, as like an offshoot, another conversation could happen, though. Be like, they tried... This is what they've...
I really like books that, like...
what's the need to take something that is good as it is, right? And it's not... But it's not... It's considered not good enough for certain folks to change it, but then still you're not the original thing anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay that this might be something that you don't like, that's not for you.
And when they talk about, like, even the fact that, like, they kept the original label, like, this is, and I was fascinated because I always thought that the Malort label, which is, I would argue, ugly, but in a very pleasing way, I thought that
it's ugly cute.
Yeah. It's so iconic.
Yeah.
But I think I had this assumption that it was made to kind of reflect the tone and the spirit of Malort, because it feels like it captures that.
Yeah.
So when I was reading back in, like, the early history and realizing that it was just the label of the original...
It's just been that.
That's just what it was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily this reflection of...
No, it's just been that. It's just one of those things that they just go together.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They just kind of they've stayed the same and done that together.
I think it's at its heart, I think it's the ugly orange yellow, except not so ugly.
Let me see.
But then contrasted with that red, like, graphically,
it's pixelated.
Yeah. And these are the new bottles. Like, the epilogue of the book talked about what the new bottles are, because they did, within the last couple of years, like, it was brought home, they have new ownership, and they've kept a lot of these things, but there were some things they updated. So it talked about, like, the cap is different. Like, it's a twisty brown now. It has the Carl Jeppson, who apparently was a real Swedish person.
Real dude.
We didn't find out a whole lot about him, and I spent the whole time like, why don't we know more?
They even tried to find could not.
I was like, why aren't we getting
Carl
more?
Jeppson is kind of an enigma, and I think that adds... But the fact that they left his name on there this whole time, like, Carl, bro, thanks, man.
Well, and, like, I got through the first section with George, and I was like, why does he care so much about this? What is the lore of this? And then when we got more into the kind of Renaissance period, the Malort Renaissance, when Peter was asking those questions, I was like, oh, we were saving that because we have these questions, and we're going to address why we have these questions.
Yeah.
So I did think that was a nice touch. But then it has the initials on the bottom, so it, like, talks... I did do a tour of my Malort bottle after reading the epilogue, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think I was originally trying to circle us to the idea of the voice of Malort in the current moment, and, like, through the Renaissance of Malort, and how that ties back, and it's kind of an evolution of the original marketing. But Malort, I think the Malort voice is so iconic to us.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like this voice of, like, the alt side of the city in some ways.
Yeah, I think the city has its... So, I think we need to look at it in the grand scale of the United States in general and the other big cities that reside within it. So you have New York, you have Chicago, you have Los Angeles. All of them have very specific personalities, right, that are known globally. Chicago, the one that's in the middle of them all, is the you are what you are city, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you are what you are, you say what you say, you mean what you mean, you do what you do. And that's kind of what this is. It is what it is. It tastes how it tastes. You respond the way you respond.
Which, honestly, now that we're, like, multiple shots in, I do not have the fear of Malort. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous even sitting down to film this.
I wasn't. Because
I hadn't had Malort sober.
I would, if I thought you were gonna struggle, I would have never have said, I would have been like, we can't do this.
That's true. I feel like that stuff, what did we have? You gave me, like, the Korean Malort?
Well, I call it the Korean Malort because it has a similar kind of aftertaste. And so I went looking through the ingredients, I was like, is there wormwood in this?
Yeah.
And there's not, but it is, I think it has kind of like where you just kind of go, at the end, it has that sort of like herbally. It's herbal.
Yeah.
It's herbal. It has that herbally sort of aftertaste. And when I tried it, I was just like, this is the Korean Malort. And I was like, I understand this taste. You know?
But I cut you off. You were talking about the voice of Malort in relation to the voice of Chicago.
Oh, yeah. So, I think, Chicago, like I said, Chicago kind of is what it is. And I think it's not trying to be anything it's not. And I think that's what Malort is. And I think in like the sphere that is the United States and the way each city kind of has its own vibe, this is the place where you can go and you could go to a local bar with your local friend and do this special thing that you can only do here. And it's going to be one of those experiences where everyone's going to laugh at the end. Like, if you hate it, you hate it. The face you make is going to be everyone at the bar is going to laugh, especially the minute the bartender knows that this is your first shot of Malort.
It will probably be a free shot of Malort.
It'll be a free shot of Malort. Yours was. Yeah. And they're going to watch it happen.
And I've lived here for like a decade.
Right. They're going to watch it happen. When we were at the bar and I waved the bartender over, I was like, bud, you got Malort? And he was like, yeah. And I was just like, she's never had one. And he was just like, ow! He pulls it out, boom, right there, hands it to her, and he was like, ding, 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 and just watched her take it, and it wasn't on the tab at the end because it was her free shot. Yeah, and so it's always like, oh, what? Oh my God, boom! It was the fastest. He was on it. I think he was in the middle of helping somebody else, and he stopped.
I think if I was a bartender, that would be like a little moment of joy in my night.
Oh, God. No, yes, that's exactly what it is for them. Especially because Malort was kind of it kind of got its resurgence within the populace by bartenders making it their house shot because it was entertaining to watch the reactions. Yeah. Because if the house shot's only $5 and you're there to get the party going, you're going to do the house shot. And so, or if it's like the deal of the day. Yeah. There's a place up here by us in Andersonville that has a deal for $12. You get a 10-inch personal pan, a shot of Malort, and an old style.
And it's not Simon's somehow still. Like, that's how prevalent Malort is. Yeah. And I think at some point, I thought maybe it was this legend that had gotten built up around, because you know how, like, we really hold on to our, like, local thing. Yeah. And I was like, maybe it's been blown out of proportion. Maybe Malort isn't as big as I think it is, or it feels like it is, or lives within the cultural consciousness. But it is. It is. Like, even when I went to the liquor store last night, just random liquor store, I did a cursory glance through the liquor bottles, because I don't know where Malort lives in terms of the liquors.
I mean, I think they just kind of place it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I did like a sweep to prove that I was trying to help myself.
You do have to find it.
And then I just looked at the guy and I was like, Malort, and he was like, and I did like the,
And he was right where you're standing every time.
And no questions.
Yeah, every liquor store is going to have it. Yeah. Target doesn't. I learned that the hard way. So
now, because I've never introduced anyone to Malort, clearly, I've just had my first Malort this year.
Yeah.
How twisted would that be, though, if I was making people take Malort shots and I'd never had one?
I mean, it'd be a boss move.
Honestly.
They don't know that you ever had it.
I should have been doing that this whole time.
Yeah,
I think you would have respected me more.
I would have done.
Yeah.
But I took it up to Michigan, and I'm looking for it, and I'm at Target. I was like, it's not here. I asked the guy. He's like, oh, we don't sell it. And I looked at him. I was like, what the fuck? So then I went to the Jules. Jules was sold out. So then I went to the liquor store, and there she was. I was like, thank you. I do appreciate Jules being sold out, though.
Yeah.
The guy he was like, we're sold out. We're waiting on our shit.
I'm still mad at Jewel because I couldn't find that berry beer this summer.
That was limited. That's a Goose Island. That'll be another installment of
I feel like
boozing around Chicago.
Doesn't he have a
He has a book about Goose Island.
Beer?
Yeah. Goose Island invented the bourbon barrel beer. So if you get a bourbon barrel beer, Goose Island invented that.
He has a book, Barrel Aged Stout and Selling Out.
Goose
Island,
that's it.
Anheuser-Busch, and how craft beer became big business. Which dovetails right with the Renaissance of Malort. You guys are going to be so tired of me saying the Renaissance of Malort, but honestly, I think it fits.
Yeah.
Even taking out like the class.
I mean, even taking out the locals and taking out, because listen, at this point in time, half of this city is in fact people who have moved in.
Yeah.
Right? So, taking all, like, the localness away from it, right? For it to become just a known thing and its legendary status, and to in fact have instilled itself into the local lore so prevalently within a short period of time to make it feel like it's always been this way.
Yeah, that's one thing that really kind of, I have no words, shocked me in the book was how recent the history feels.
Yeah.
Like, it goes back in terms of the origination of it,
Mhm.
but it was like always kind of this underground thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't to the point where we think of it now with this kind of, not guerrilla marketing, but this more like edgier kind of voice.
I think the marketing works really well in the ways of the way the locals are.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little rough around the edges. So for the marketing to be do not enjoy responsibly, that's on the side of their trucks with somebody grimacing, having taken a shot. It says do not enjoy responsibly.
It really leans into the fear marketing.
It leans into it, and it's kind of like, you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, but anyone who's had it goes, no, I like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's funny. It knows it has this reputation, and it lives on that. It thrives off of it. It's kind of that, you know, it's chuckle fuckery.
And we talked about it too in relation to the book, because there was kind of like this will they, won't they kind of element in terms of how some of these power struggles, like small scale power struggles, but power struggles nonetheless, and ones that I felt kind of invested in because everyone in this book felt like someone I know. Or could
when
just
I
run
saw
through
the
street.
picture...
Right?
When I saw the picture, so in the book, not to give anything away, please read it, it's a good read. If you, when you're reading, if you are of our millennial generation, the minute more players come into the game, and it's now in the 2010s.
Yeah.
And more players come into the game, and there's this, and the resurgence is beginning, and you're reading about these people, and you just go, these hipster fucks. And then eventually you get to a picture of them, and you go... This is exactly what I thought they would look like.
I almost texted you. I knew it was the hipsters that saved Malort, or like something in relation to the hipsters and Malort.
Yeah.
But I wanted to save it for this moment.
Yeah.
And also I knew you were at a movie. So I kept it to myself. But in relation to that, one, yes, like we know these people.
There's one guy in a flat cap. Two of them got beards.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, these hipster ass. I fucking knew it. Especially with their names.
Yeah.
Sam.
But in relation
Peter.
to how things play out.
Chris.
And knowing how some of these power struggles were going to play out.
Yeah.
Like
I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, because we know the marketing of Malort.
And we know those people.
Yeah.
Like we don't actually know those people, but we know those people.
Right. I also just love the idea that Malort was run for, like, our concept of Malort most of the time by just this older woman who didn't...
A grandma!
What an excellent idea.
We could always change it.
I mean, I'm feeling good.
No, it's not, okay, listen, I'm gonna do this and then we'll explain something.
You're seeing a whole different side of me today.
Listen,
I don't know what that means.
So it is only 35% alcohol.
How does that compare to, like, Tito's? It talks about vodka in the book a lot, in a really disparaging way. That was ironic to me because vodka is your other favorite alcohol.
No, Tito's is my
Right,
favorite
sorry.
alcohol.
Tito's is your other favorite alcohol.
Not necessarily vodka. I've had a lot of shitty vodkas in my day. What is the alcohol content at Tito's? Hold, please. 40%. So not that different. It's 80 proof, and then this one is 70 proof. Those free shots at the bar that we got actually the day that you did Malort, because you know when you're at the bar long enough and they start giving you free shots? It was Tito's.
Is that... Oh, yeah, it was time to go home then, because I thought it was a mix shot.
No, that was Tito's.
Oh, no. Well, because during the break, we were discussing that we've had more of this Malort than I thought we would. Because I bought this special.
There is a part in the book that they bring up a bartender talking about Malort, and he says, I gave them the house shot, and then they ended up drinking the bottle. And it was two ladies.
Yeah, or when they talked to the one guy who was kind of pretentious about not carrying Malort because he didn't want any hipsters in his bar, which I kind of do understand on a spiritual level. So I can't even judge him too much, because we grew up in the hipsters era. So I
was a hipster.
We can make fun of hipsters.
I'm an aging hipster.
But yeah, when she was talking about but then a 40-year-old woman came in and drank a bottle of Malort, and so then they wanted to get the Malort account.
Yeah. Notice how it's women.
That made me chuckle, not gonna lie.
Yeah. But you said I gave the house shot to 2 women, and the next thing you know, they drank the bottle.
Yeah.
And so it's like, men struggle.
It's interesting to think about it, because there was like I said, there were so many descriptions, because now I've had enough of it that I'm trying to place it.
Yeah.
With all of this, like, really grandiose verbiage. That poem, okay, so there's a poem in here that when I ran the books over to you last weekend,
top tier,
you read out loud. But, like, even now I'm like, there's a lot of words, and I don't know that it's as intimidating as the words. So it's like this urban legend we built.
Yeah,
around this liquor.
There is an urban legend around Malort, and I think, you know, I mean, when the poster of Malort says, Malort, tonight's the night you fight your dad. So it's like, or, you know, you're gonna shit, like, what is it about shitting pants? There was one where it was like...
But I came across the tab that I had that said women tended to have less dramatic reactions than men, which amused David, though most people agreed another sip was unnecessary. And here we are having many more sips.
I hate to break this to you, but I think you genuinely like it.
Is it because I'm Swedish, or because I have questionable taste?
Probably both, dude. But there was one, it was Tonight's the Night You Fight Your Dad.
Yeah.
And then there was another one where it was just like, you know, helping you out, shitting your pants or something like that. It was fucking funny, dude. I laughed, I was like, ha ha!
But that's what, it goes back to, like, the idea of the voice of Malort.
Yeah.
Because I think that find...
Here it is. Yeah. Malort. These paints won't shit themselves. It says a generation earlier, George taunted his audience by positioning Malort as a hallmark of masculinity. So he was taunting them.
Yeah.
Are you tough enough? Are you tough enough, right? And Sam, the guy who's, you know, started making the t-shirts, this sort of thing, did something similar, more gender neutral, but still reviling in Malort's status as a brash outsider for masochists.
Well, and I think it's got this self-deprecating voice that really resonates with especially millennials. I can't speak to younger generations because I'm not.
But it does. But that self-deprecating where it's just like it's garbage, but you know what? It is what it is!
Like, as much as millennials have always been made fun of, we are always right there making fun of ourselves just as much as anyone.
I hope the mic is picking up these ASMR crunches. But I needed a salty treat.
This is our medicine. It's the millennial medicine.
Start the day off with a shot of this bad boy. Be like, all right, here we go.
Well, that's what we talked about, the blue-collar worker who used to, like, go out drinking.
They would go out drinking, and then the next day they would get up and they would go to the bar, get a shot of Malort, and it would kind of, like, it's the hair of the dog.
Yeah, no, I was not expecting. I bought this last night, just for this. I thought we were going to have one kind of ceremonial shot.
I know.
Yeah.
I just didn't say nothing.
You always know.
I do.
Yeah.
But I think, to bring it back into the book,
yeah,
let's talk about the hipster fucks.
Yeah. Great.
It's our generation. And these guys are our age. Like, yeah. I knew it from go.
Well, yeah.
The hipster fucks. So, what's her butts? Who owns this thing? Pat. She makes me laugh because she's a grandma. And she hates it, but she loves it, but she hates it.
Yeah. Which feels very Chicago, too.
Yeah. No, I when I was reading this lady, I was like, this lady is my grandmother. Like, to everything she had done. I'm just like, her responses to things, how she was just like, this sucks, but we're gonna do it, you know?
There was a line in here about her that I just passed. She considered herself a nice person, and she wanted to be nice. That stuck with me.
That's my grandma.
Yeah.
That's my grandma. She considered herself a nice person.
She responded to some of these people reaching out to her about Malort that didn't always have the best of intentions.
No.
Simply because...
she wanted to be nice.
And also it was
she felt it was her duty to be nice about
this legacy of this thing that someone she loved.
Yeah.
And so even though
therefore she loved it, she didn't love it specifically, but she loved it because they loved it.
Yeah.
George loved it.
Yeah.
So therefore she then would continue that love, right? And so that's my grandma.
Yeah.
Sorry. Both of them.
You were on a tirade.
So, these hipster fucks. So, I don't actually know these people. I'm going to stress that out right now. I don't know who these fucking idiots are.
But at the same time,
I know exactly who these idiots are. And when she got all these hipsters were involved in all this shit, these dudes, these millennials, who are into this niche Chicago thing. And so here's the thing. It wasn't as disappeared as people may get out of this that it would, because they knew about it and they were into this niche Chicago thing, which is the lure and the legend that is Malort.
Yeah.
She gets involved with them. They really start to make it flourish, and they start to get the legends going. Like, they are really, like, churning it all over. And I knew for a fact, I was like, one of these motherfuckers is going to take this too seriously. They're going to get to the point where they take it too fucking seriously.
Because none of them were getting paid. I think, too, like, because I talked about, like, wanting more of, like, the social commentary stuff, just because I'm interested in that.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's, like, a microcosm of, like, this kind of social landscape of Chicago in a lot of ways. Like, Malort is Chicago.
Yeah.
Am I a philosophical drunk?
Mm-hmm.
My dad is. It's my favorite kind of drunk.
You're getting there, dude.
Anyway.
But I think that's why it thrives so much, is because it is. It resonates. Because it is, so, in the tradition that is doing the shot of Malort at the bar, is that when it's your first time, or you are in Chicago coming in, and the person you are with who is local has you do this shot.
Yeah.
And so it's not that anybody can have you do the shot because you are there and you're new here, shot. No, it is supposed to be a local has you there. So therefore, you then do the shot. So me giving you, Mandy couldn't give you the shot.
Right.
I was the one who had to give you the shot. And so it is a local thing.
If someone is coming into Chicago as a tourist, how do they experience Malort authentically?
Find a dive bar,
go to the bar and
have
ask.
a dive bar, but you go to a dive bar or a local bar.
You could go to Simon's, go to the OG.
Go to Simon's.
You have to have cash there, right?
Yes, it's cash only. If you walk into a bar and it's cash only, and it'll have a sign right there, you are in a local spot.
Yeah.
And the bartender if you are a transplant and you're visiting in and you want to do the shot of Malort and you want to do it right, find a dive bar. If it's cash only, that's how you know. But find a dive bar. You can tell just by the vibe and the people who are sitting in there. If there's a dog in there, gold. If you are in there and you think maybe there might be health code violations, you're probably in the right spot. If you are in a bar and you are not with a local, the bartender can act as that. Yeah. So the bartender, especially if you go, I'm not from here, I want to try Malort, they will be the conduit. That bartender will be, especially if it's like a dive bar or a local, just run-of-the-mill bar, like where it has just like an old-style sign out in front. That's how you fucking... If the sign looks like this.
Which is interesting because it talked about, like, with the Malort Renaissance. I feel like I'm going to say Renaissance in a joking manner so much that I'm going to not know how to say Renaissance anymore. But it was a lot of, like, out-of-towners and transplants as bartenders that were discovering Malort and kind of, like, spreading the gospel of Malort kind of as a way to feel, like, part of Chicago's history. Yeah. And it's interesting when we think about it, too, because it's like...
This place has a lot of rich history.
Yeah.
And she's thick.
Yeah.
You know?
But, like, the history of Malort is so interesting because as a spirit, it goes back to, like, the 50s, 60s.
Oh, it goes to 1930s.
30s, right.
It's
newer, in theory, than some of the other history.
Sure, but it is an immigrant story.
Yes. I was going to say, but then we pull, and, like, almost the kind of urban legend is not the right word, but, like, when we go back and kind of circle back to that idea of Carl Jeppson. Yeah. And how he, like, when Peter was trying to figure out if he even really existed.
Yeah, he's real.
Which he did. His name is on the bottle
he's
for a
dude,
reason.
He's a guy. He's a bro.
He's from Sweden. This is a Besk.
It's a Besk. The type of so here's the thing. So there was a fucking trademarking issue because of course there was. You know you made it when people try to steal your shit. And so there were a couple of fucks. The Velvet Hour.
How do you feel about the Velvet Hour? And I think it's the Violet Hour.
It's the Violet Hour. I've been wrong. I don't care. But it's like, okay, so...
The Velvet Hour... No, the Velvet Underground is a band.
That's the thing. I think I'm thinking Velvet Underground. Oh, so the Violet Hour. It has started in New York. Like, it's from, like, a chain. Like it's not local. You know? And so I wasn't surprised at all that someone would come in and try to, like I said, you've made it when someone tries to steal your shit or copy you or like get on the bandwagon with that.
Yeah.
And so the fact that there were several issues with them trying to trademark Malort, be like, well, this is our own Malort. And they're just saying, Malort's the name of the thing. It's a Besk.
Yeah.
The type of alcohol is a Besk. So people are like, what is this? It's a Besk. It's not, it's a liqueur. It's a liqueur, yes, but it's a Besk. Like the type. It has wormwood in it, which you also find in absinthe.
Yeah.
So Malort means wormwood. That's the thing. The name of this product is Malort because of the ingredients that are in it, but the type of alcohol that it is the Besk.
Yeah.
And so the trademark issues came in because they thought the type of alcohol this is the Malort. And then that's when the Swedish history really became important because they could go, no, that is the Swedish word for the ingredient. This is the type. This isn't the type of alcohol this is. This is what it's called. This is its name. This is our brand name for this Besk alcohol.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to think about that too, because reading this,
it's like them saying like this is a beer.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's, you know what I mean? Like,
and Malort has like, even outside of its like success, because it's undeniable now a success, but it has such a cult following.
Yeah.
And so to like think about like at the time that these trademark things were happening, now knowing this story, if I just as an outsider was looking at the cult following around Malort, I would assume that Malort was very successful. And in reality, it was still like one person pulling a salary. Like success is relative. I don't even like know. It didn't fully delve into all of the costs related to producing Malort, but
it's expensive to make a booze.
It sounded very, and like they talked about originally, the bottles had like little booklets hanging off of them that weren't gotten rid of until like the mid 2010s, I feel like, or 2000s. I forget where.
I feel like sometimes when it came to the book, like they were like the distributors, or if you were to buy it at a store, it would be taken off.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that those lasted.
But just like thinking about like and like George had so many like loving touches. He loved this liquor that he presumably didn't even really drink. I don't remember.
I feel like he did. They don't really talk about if he indulged in it or not.
Yeah.
But I feel like he did. All right, and we're back. Cheers.
What else haven't we? I feel like there was more we wanted to talk about. There's always more to talk about with Malort.
There is interesting concepts in the book talking about like how it got past prohibition. Which is like the medicinal aspects of wormwood and what it can do, and that's how it got past prohibition.
And that there were some of the consumers that got it through the Dark Ages, how they had it for the first time as kids as like medicine.
Yeah.
And then they carried into drinking it as adults.
Medicine, fucking funny. Like what the fuck?
Okay, so there was a tangent, an anecdote in the book, I think, where it talked about like acquiring the taste of Malort.
Yeah.
And it mirrored...
It reminded me of my youth of acquiring the taste for beer.
Yeah, no, it mirrored a conversation I had with my dad. I had my first drink when I technically was underage, but I was going abroad the summer after my high school. I was senior year of high school, which is the last time I've been abroad, and we're going to Japan this week. Oh my god.
In 4 days. We're leaving in 4 days.
I should probably put things in that suitcase. Anyway...
Nice color. It's a green color.
I'm big into green. And so my dad really wanted my first drink to be with him, which is really sweet. I love it's really
your dad should introduce you.
And so he got me an Oliver Winery mead because he thought it would be pretty palatable. He knew I was a nerd and that mead would just be appealing.
Yeah.
And it was. I wanted to like that mead so much. I hated it. And I remember saying like, I don't like this. And my dad said, it's an acquired taste.
You do have to acquire the taste for it, yeah.
And I said, I don't know that I want to acquire it.
I think in part, everyone goes through the phases, like, in their youth of, like, not liking beer or whatever, what have you. Because it's a taste you're not used to. Like, it does have a distinct taste, no matter what. Yeah. Even if it's a light beer, whatever, what have you. But you do kind of develop the acquisition for it. And I think, in part, it's, when you're a kid, your taste buds are on fire all the time. You know, like, because even if we go back to eat the sour candies that we ate when we were kids that, like, set our mouths on fire.
Or, like, how Mountain Dew is best when you're, like, around puberty.
Right. You know, and then you get into our age and you're like, this ain't shit.
Well, I would expect this around in bars, obviously, to have Malort.
All the bars
Wrigleyville is mentioned in the book, which makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the Nice Lounge, I got a story about the Nice
Lounge. The Nice Lounge is very controversial in the epilogue of this book in relation to the infusions. I don't want to get into that. Yes. It feels like a Chicago fight I'm not prepared to enter.
Can you go into the fridge and grab me one of these while I tell them about the Nice Lounge? Okay, so the Nice Lounge. Let me tell you about the Nice Lounge. The Nice Lounge. She got a cramp. The Nice Lounge is on the southern tip of Wrigleyville. I have spent a lot of time in Nice Lounge, as in my entire family's been there getting super drunk after a Cubs game. That being said, the Nice Lounge always carried Malort. They always had it. You could get it no matter what. They always had it on tap. But apparently, they went off the rails and started making infusions that were kind of like, listen, Malort's an actual brand. You kind of have to... I understand that Malort... Oh my gosh, she's limping. Did you actually hurt yourself? But the Nice Lounge is the tiniest... Like, so me, my brother, my ma, and my stepdad, we went to a Cubs game. And then we all got real fucking drunk.
Nice Lounge is talked about as one of the, like, foundations of Malort throughout the book.
They are the OG Nice Lounge. We got super drunk. And in fact, my stepdad, we all did shots of Malort together as a family. It was the most beautiful family thing we've ever done. My mom hated it.
That sounds... I can picture all of you.
They do talk about it in the book, having musicians do Malort.
Yeah.
And I have... So I was at a show... So for those of you who know me, also go watch my shit.
Do, because one, and I can say this, because your niche isn't necessarily something that I follow organically. I watch all your shit, because I love you.
Yeah.
And you're funny. But, like, all of your stuff is good. It's insightful.
Yeah.
I know enough, because I've hung around you in our friend group for enough time that I do know generally what you're talking about.
Sure, yeah, you're never clueless.
So if you are at all interested in K-pop, specifically BTS, and you're not following Dana, I do have questions about how.
Same.
But
if you, like, follow K-pop just in general, I'm also on the podcast that is just, like, K-pop adjacent. Like, all the K-pops.
Yes. Which I am listening to learn about all of the K-pops.
Yeah, so that's me. But, so, to tie that in, I was at... an Epic High show last Wednesday with Mandy.
Yeah.
And in the show, it was at the Vic, which is Belmont. So I went to see Epic High. We're halfway through the show. Fucking Tablo is just like, so you hear you guys got this drink called Malort. And it's an experience. And I just went, oh no. The sound guys who are local crew, because Chicago's a union city, so all your sound guys, your stage guys, they're all union.
That was one thing I loved about, like, the JB, like, press tour around the DNC. Was, like, him stressing that we're a union town.
He's like, we're a union town! Anytime at stagehands, union town! Fucking steelworkers, union town! You know, he was just... So we're a union town, so the fucking, like, sound guys, me and Mandy were in the back.
Yeah.
And Tablo goes, I hear you guys got this song, this drink called Malort? And the sound guys are like, fuck yeah, Malort!
Every time I mention a certain word, you have to shut it. If I say a certain word, 어떤 금지어, every time I say that word, you have to drink it. Okay, you have to sip it. Every single time I say a certain word. Okay, wait. You don't drink it until I say a word. Okay? The key word tonight, I'm just gonna choose one randomly, is motherfuckers.
And so it's gotten to Korea. So the Koreans now know that Malort exists, at least via Epic High, which is like an OG group. Like, they've been around for quite some time.
I feel like Malort has entered the national and international cultural consciousness. Well, so if we talk about, like, the Renaissance where Chicago really rediscovered it in the 2010s, now we're having this moment.
The world is being... So I have a theory on this.
Yeah.
So the world... The Chicago has entered the world stage.
Yes.
It's always been a big player in the United States as the second city. So, like, with it being... Now, it's called the second city because the first Chicago burnt to the ground.
Yes.
And was built up. But it's also been compared to New York, and it's the second city to New York, and blah, 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 blah. Now, in Chicago, thanks Obama, has become an international city. Like, Chicago is an international... Like, it's become like this just within the last decade or so.
Yeah.
Since Obama, really. That's why I said thanks Obama. Like, it has become an international city. And so, like, our traditions and our things that we do and, like, all of meow, 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 meow has become kind of more internationally based. So I wasn't at all surprised when Tala was like, so I hear you have this shot called Malort. And I was just like, oh my God. And then they did, in fact, drink, though the bartenders brought a fucking glass. And there is kind of that joy and there is that gentleness of being in a city that is just what it is. And that's where Malort comes in, because it just is what it is.
And it's the drink of the people, and Chicago feels like the city for the people. Like, there's a lot of talk about Chicago kind of being discovered on the national and international kind of scene because it is everyday people. Like, sure, there are, like, your, like, A-lister spots.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have, here's the thing. When in comparison to New York and Los Angeles is a town built on entertainment. New York is a town built on the fact that it is on the coast and immigration, and they built that shit and everything landed there first. Like, that's really what, those are the two things. Chicago is in the middle. Chicago is the gateway. It is the gateway to the West. Like, that is, they say, St. Louis says that that's what they are, but they're full of shit. So, but like, Chicago is it's the industrial hub of the Midwest. You get there and it has everything that New York has and has everything that Los Angeles has. But at the end of the day, the people who are there, it's just what they do.
And I think that's the story of Malort too.
That's the story of Malort. Yeah.
George, for like all of his ups
he
and
was
downs.
He was a local kid for the most part.
He grew up in an immigrant neighborhood.
Sure did.
And like
in Minnesota.
And so it's
Came
just
down,
this idea,
which is a classic story.
like
you come down to the big city. Was it Minnesota? Why do I feel like I said that wrong?
I don't know.
He wasn't originally from Chicago.
But he grew up in Chicago at the same time.
Okay, so George is from Duluth, Minnesota.
Okay. You were
so,
all
right. Yeah, no, Minnesota. I knew he wasn't local, but he moved here in college.
Yeah.
He went to Northwest.
But just, like, this is the drink of the people.
Yeah.
And, like, the fact that, like, I as a transplant, you as someone born and raised.
Yeah. And to be fair, I'm the third generation born and raised.
Yeah.
On the immigrant in Chicago. I mean, and we're all Southside. There is a little bit of a vilification of Chicago, and I think that's why this drink is so fucking fun, because it does have that to it, but it eventually, like, gentles in. And then it just goes into your veins, which I think is kind of what Chicago is. Like, it is that you get there, and if you are from, because Chicago is surrounded by small town. It's small town America surrounding it. Even Milwaukee's a small city. You can walk through it. Milwaukee's fun as fuck. If you ever want to go to Milwaukee, fucking go. It's fun. But it is surrounded by small town, middle America, Midwest USA. Yeah. Right? And so Chicago is that. It hits you, and then it kind of settles in, and you just kind of go, and that's really what it kind of feels like as a place. And so when you hear people, they've never experienced the place, so they never gave it a shot. And I think that's why, at the end of the day, why it does so well, because people are like, oh, this is what this place, no, that's right. And locals will go, if we're going to have a booze, that's it. But, yeah, and people talk, oh, Chicago's so violent. I'm like, are we ready to fight? Sure. But if we're going to be fighting, it's going to be over something that's, like, fucking worth it. You know what I mean? Like Malort. I'll fucking fight you.
Fight your dad.
You will fight your dad.
I would never. I love my dad. My dad's
I love your dad.
I want you to drink my dad so bad. Dad, if you're watching, I know you're not, because you get weirded out by watching me. I know that.
I'll drink with your dad. I won't drink with mine. I'll drink with my stepdad. My stepdad built a tavern in the basement of the house during the pandemic.
That one hit my nose in a way that some of the others haven't. But I'm starting to not feel anything, which I don't think is a great sign. Or maybe it's the best sign. So,
but I think this, like, at the end of the day, this book,
which is a good read. It was a good.
It is a good read. It's a very good read. I read it in 2 days. And there's pictures and shit. And you can see, like, the original logos and all the, you know.
Instead of a small Chicago press.
And so it is a very much a local thing. They kind of embrace just what they are.
Yeah.
And it's just that Chicago in and of itself is just, like, a city of kind of, it's a little bit tomfoolery.
That's a great word.
This is a city of tomfoolery, and it does what it needs to do, and it's serious when it needs to be serious, but at the same time, like, just fuck around, man. And sometimes you find out.
Yeah, we have a great city.
Yeah.
It's like the Malort test.
It's the Malort test. When that person said don't take it, I went, you failed the first fucking test.
Did I pass the Malort test?
Fuck yeah, you did, dude. We drank a third of this bottle, dude.
And I could taste it this time. At least at the beginning.
It's honestly not bad.
I honestly, no, it's not.
I'm telling you, men struggle more.
Because, like, I guess they removed, like, that, but they still call it a two-fisted. Malort has the aroma and full-bodied flavor of an unusual botanical. Mm-hmm. Its bitter taste is savored by two-fisted drinkers. Which I, as I was reading, was assuming it meant to invoke the, like, you need two fists.
No, it's because you have
and
one
not
each.
The two fist.
No, it's the two fist.
I don't know. I think... Is that what it was meant to invoke?
Yes. So I know you weren't there.
I remember. No, I used to two-fist. I used to two-fist things.
No, but when... So to bring it back to me. So when I went to J-Hope's listening party, he did one in Chicago.
Right.
And the bar was on him.
Right.
For the first 2 hours. I rolled into that... I got rolled into that crowd. Obviously spotted... this. These are the... Because, listen, if Hobie's buying me drinks, I'm buying 2. I'm getting 2. So, no, it's these people.
I used to two-fist in college just because I didn't want to have to wait at the bar again.
Well, that's what it is.
But for some reason, so I think, just to preserve my honor and intelligence, I think I was interpreting that way because it was so much of that machismo marketing where I assumed it was like... But I guess that would fly in contrast to that, because if you need two fists, then you're not as strong.
No, if you need to do this...
Yeah.
This is cute. No, this is the person who's ordering 2 beers at once.
Okay, so it's implying that Malort satisfies
the people who are...
Okay, I'm on the right page. I do not take that as any indication of my intelligence, because I hope I proved over the course of these 4 years that I have some good thoughts sometimes. We should probably wrap this up.
You can find me on TikTok. Dana doing her best Bangtan news.
I will put the thing here.
Yeah, it's here.
Thank you for joining us today for this slightly more unhinged version of whatever I usually bring you. But I appreciate you as always. I do not remember...
God, I did it to myself this time.
I do not remember my usual outro. I'm not going to lie to you. Like and subscribe if you feel like it. Read something good.
Oh, also, I'm going to be starting my YouTube.
Yes. I'll link it below.
The Bangtan News. There's nothing on it yet, but I'm going to open it up with our vlog from Japan. So you'll see both of us.
Yeah. So subscribe to that. If you're not subscribed to me, subscribe to me. Please.
Subscribe to Melody.
Read something good. And yeah. Bye.
Well, let's do one more shot. Leave it in. I did this to myself. What? Hold on. It's drill. Hold on. I got to make sure it doesn't spill. Okay, ready?
You already spilled.
It's not that bad. I don't know why people say it's gross. That's fucking stupid.
I didn't flinch.